coming on.
Excited to meet Chief Gerbo. Gina reached out to schedule a meeting.
Right.
Yeah, it'll be fun. Did you catch our
Okay.
podcast?
Call to order the meeting of the legislative committee for the city of Salem for September 13th, 2024. Happy Friday the 13th, everybody. President Arhoy.
Nishioka.
Nordike.
Stapleton. Is alive and raised from the dead.
Yeah. Welcome from the land of
Whatever.
not so well. I won't say it out loud.
Terry?
All right. Updates and information sharing, legislative updates. We're gonna go right to our federal team. I see we have Kat and Terry is joining us. I don't see Mark yet. Should we come back to the federal team maybe?
Mine out quick from there.
Kat, should we come? Oh, here's Mark. Here he is. Here he is.
Mark and Terry, do you guys want to go first or do you want to pause a minute and we'll go to the state side
Can you
first?
switch us over to grid view?
I'm sorry?
Can you switch us to grid view, please?
Maybe.
Or-
Right hand side down where it says view. There you go.
Thank you.
Gallery.
Are you feeling ready?
Sure.
Okay,
Great, we're ready for you. Could you turn up the volume, please?
Do you want to kick it off or want me to go? Well, he's on. Oh, there he goes.
Sorry, I'm having some technical problems right now, but why don't you go ahead and kick it off, Terry?
I'll start with just letting give you a little update on DC. We are in the 3 weeks that they are in town before the election.
Sorry, I'm having some technical problems right now, but why don't you go ahead and kick it off, Terry?
I'll start with just letting give you a little update on DC. There seems to be a significant delay or something.
Sorry, I think that's on our end. I think we're with our live streaming, we were causing a playback and I think we just resolved it. So sorry about that. Why don't you start over, Terry?
Okay. Well, hello, everyone. I'll just give you a little update on what's happening in DC here. They're in town. Congress is in town for 3 weeks before the election, last week, this week, and next week. And they are really trudging along here. They're trying to figure out what the path forward is to fund the government through the end of the fiscal year, or after the end of the fiscal year starts anew on October 1st, and they do not have a deal to fund the government going forward. So they will be forced into some sort of a continuing resolution. We don't know exactly what that's going to look like at the moment. House Republicans are pledging to put on the floor a series of votes and bills that would be attached to a continuing resolution that would put some red meat sort of bills language onto the extension of funding. That's not going to work for the Democrats in the Senate. And so it's unclear how they're going to resolve that dispute. They have just days to do it, and they know they have to do it. It is looking more and more likely, even though everyone is saying it's not going to happen on an official side. But the thing that has to happen essentially is that they're going to have to pass a clean CR, continuing resolution, that will likely be through sometime in the early December. That's pretty normal, and they would then come back after the election, take a look at where things stand, who's going to control what next year, and decide how to move forward. When they're going to get to that is anyone's guess. I can't imagine that they're going to close down the government right before a major election, but you never know. And so stay tuned. But this does delay the funding of our projects that we have in these bills because you can't do anything until they're passed into law. So that is looking like that will happen sometime in December at this point.
Right, thank you. I don't know that I would refer to those things as normal, but maybe typical. Because none of that's normal.
Sadly, they have become normal. I think since I've been in Washington, I think there's only been
we've adopted some kind of weird Stockholm syndrome thing here where we've talked ourselves into this all being normal.
Yeah.
would you mind just talking a little bit about where those appropriations, what those appropriations are?
Sure. I
It
don't,
feels, it feels to me like, there's about 350 for the airport.
yeah, hold on, I don't have any
I'm
notes.
pulling up my spreadsheet here. There is $250,000 in the House T-HUD bill for the airport. And there is 702,000 for the Community Violence Reduction Initiative. Also in the House CJS bill. Those are the two that I'm seeing that are active and that are alive right now.
City Manager, if we receive that community violence funding, it says on our sheet here for a crime analyst, 2 officers and other things. Would that be for funding existing positions, or is it your intention to fund new positions with that money?
The existing positions,
Okay,
given where we are.
that's what I would advise, but I want to make sure we're on the same page.
Anything else from the federal folks?
No, we're waiting to see, there's a few major things going to happen this fall, and so we will see who is sitting where, and they're scrambling to get this done, lay down some messaging, bills and votes. House Republicans are forcing Dems to take some bad votes or hard votes, and Senate Dems are forcing the Republicans to take some hard votes. And that's just the way they play before the election. They'll go home, campaign, and then we'll see what happens in November.
All right, well, we will stay tuned. Thank you for that normal report. All right, we will move on to Justin and then the state update.
All right, thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council and staff. Nice to see everybody for our update here today. Just real quick, talk about campaign season, legislative calendar, past meetings that I've had, meetings that I have upcoming, and then finally legislative priorities is going to be the meat of our meeting today.
Yeah.
So with that, as everybody knows, as Kat and Mark and Terry just mentioned, it is campaign season. So you guys can imagine what we're doing at home. On the lobby side is getting a lot of calls from candidates, getting a lot of calls from incumbents. Going into the next session, there is 53 days on the calendar.
That's right, just one days.
Until the election, but just to make everybody aware, the budget process, agencies had to get their stuff in around September 1st. We know the governor's budget will come out right around the 1st of December. That's a wonderful document that really is insignificant the day after it comes out. That being said, it used to be a big old paperweight. That being said, it gives a nice roadmap or a framework on where the administration wants to go. Then the legislature obviously takes that up in early February, March. And then we really work hard till that May forecast. And then the sprint is on May to June 30th, around July 4th when they have to get out of there. So that's the process there. In terms of September, we've got legislative days, 23rd, 24th, 25th. Task forces meet on the 26th, and then there's a request deadline on legislation for the 27th. So as we talk internally as staff, directions that we want to go, we want to pay special attention to those dates.
And was that?
September, this month. There will also be legislative days again in December, kind of right after the governor's budget comes out, and then a couple more deadlines there, and then Christmas and the holidays, and then everybody's back at it in January. More and more fundraising until the session starts officially, as everyone can still imagine. Even after the elections, elected officials still raise funds to deal with campaign debt, et cetera, and to build war chests for the next time out. So that being said, that's a legislative calendar. Past upcoming meetings, I think I've shared with everybody here that we've met with every member of legislative leadership. That's Senate President, that's the Minority Leader, that's the Speaker of the House, that's the House Majority Leader, the House Minority Leader. I've met with all of them. We've also met with the co-chairs, both Kate Lieber and Tana Sanchez, which is great. Certainly met with our own folks, Patterson, Anderson, Evans. We will be continuing to meet with those folks, go over our proposals that will come out of our meeting today as we fine tune our legislative agenda coming into that. So I still need to meet with Representative Mannix, Representative Deal, Senator Gerard, and then Evans on some emergency management stuff. But again, those are continuing things. We will get 2 more cracks at leadership. So I will be attending their events in late September, October, but then we will also be doing more of a goodwill tour, as everybody understands, and I will be getting the final crack with them before the election and probably in that interim that I talked about before going into next session. Why is that so important? Because as we look at our list of legislative priorities and all the appropriations funding that we need in this city of Salem, the people that control that, who controls the agenda, who appoints the committee chairs, who makes those things happen, that's legislative leadership. That's the co-chairs of Ways and Means. So as we get that framework from the governor, then that goes through the committee structure, then that goes through leadership, and they try to really figure out what can we afford, what can we do. Now, the revenue forecast was up. That's not always good news because you just get more and more people coming in and asking for more and more things. Oftentimes when you get a down forecast, it kind of bodes well because legislative leadership can say, hey, we really got to tighten the reins here. We're in a tough position. So it almost makes it a little bit easier to operate. But since the revenue forecast was good, there are extra dollars there. We just have to make sure to continue to message and communicate with legislative leadership on how we do that. We need to continue to message and share with our own elected officials from the city how we intend to accomplish that and make sure that they're at that step, every step of the way, part of that process. So looking forward to that. That's past, that's what's upcoming. And again, so many events, I can't even go through it. But we also get those individual cracks with legislative leadership to reiterate specifically. We've had general conversations. We've had the 30,000 foot level. Here's what we need in terms of sheltering. Here's what we need in terms of what we're looking to do on State Street. Here's what we're looking to do with the Capital District, enhancing public safety. Here's how we're going down that road. We've had those conversations. Now we can get a little more specific after our meeting today. Finally, I want to let people know legislative priorities. It's great. We're going to shuffle around a bunch of ideas today, but how quick does this stuff add up? Just so everybody gets context. We need to understand. We get our funding for sheltering, great. That's 8.2 mil. NAV Center, that's 2 mil. We look at State Street. We're asking for 5. We already got 2. That gets us about 7. If we do a capital district, a couple mil a year, every biennium, that's $4 million. That's great. Airport, we've got 2 asks for about 1.35. So just that alone gets us to about 22.6 million. Right off the bat, even when the Senate president was here from Salem, we never pulled that kind of dough out of the legislature. We did pull some big ones, Guerin Island, obviously 20 mil for the ozone. But again, those things add up really quick. So we need to keep that in the back of our mind and have reasonable expectations going into that. Obviously, you've heard me say this a bunch, without Courtney, without Winters. I mean, things are a little trickier now than they were. There's a little bit of a Salem hangover from our folks being in leadership. But that being said, we are having those conversations with leadership moving forward, and we will figure out a way to get those things done and map those out because I really feel, not just as a citizen of Salem, but I really feel in the past and my 7 or 8 years here, we're really starting to take off. I mean, the feedback I get, you guys are up to great things. The direction of our city is really going well, even for outside folks that aren't here day in, day out. They understand that. I want to keep that momentum going. So I'm really excited about that. And again, all these projects, staff has heard me say a million times, we need to ask for exactly what we need. We know that's a huge number, but I like to put that out there and I like to always be transparent with what the true needs of the city are. Now, we might only get this, this, and this, but then we can plan and get strategic about how we move forward on that in the future. So I'm excited about this session. I'm a little apprehensive, but Senate President's been there for a while. He's starting to really get some experience under his belt. Folks like Lieber moving into the co-chair and Representative Sanchez also getting, her second session under her belt. I think it's going to really bode well for us. So I'm encouraged, but I also want people to know when we're going through all these priorities, some of these requests are big and some of them are difficult, but we've got to ask for them because it's what we truly need.
Any thought to trying to get pilot into the GRB?
It'd be great, especially after the public communications around payroll tax. So I have also, I didn't put in my little list, I've been meeting with the Gov's Ledge director, making sure that, Mr. Livingston's aware of what we really truly need. So that, I think, will be a continued angle, to your point, Mr. Mayor, that we do keep talking and saying, hey, here's the needs as a capital city. Here's what we provide.
Have we
and need to
specifically
be paid
asked
for that.
Have we specifically asked them to bring in the GRB?
Not yet.
Okay.
The GRV is.
Governor's
recommended
recommended,
budget.
sorry.
But that's.
She got all those terms down.
I would love to piggyback on that. This district concept came up at a neighborhood association meeting last night. Evidently, folks who are following Representative Anderson have been hearing about that and like, what's this whole this district we're talking about? And so I'm going to get more questions like that. I know our revenue task force has identified either a payment in lieu of taxes or some. Everyone I've talked to, I'm gonna just shorten it because time is of the essence. Everyone I talk to thinks it's a great idea for the state to pay for these things, right? Of course, even some of our our biggest skeptics of the needs for city revenue are on board with this. And if we were to ever ask people to write their legislators, I think we would get a lot of people who'd be willing to do that. I know sometimes there's a strategy towards having more of one-on-one conversations and not having the big public facing campaign. I get that. But I'm wondering, is this the year that we consider that approach?
The thing, if I could just jump in and you could, the thing about that is every Salem area legislator, regardless of party, is on board with pilot. So we don't have to win them over. It's the 55 other members of the House and the 29 other members of the Senate. And they don't care what our residents have to say. Frankly about it. So that's the challenge is it's like all of our folks, I mean, it doesn't, like I said, it doesn't matter what party they're in, they are on board with pilot.
Great.
And so that's not the
That's not the
challenge.
problem.
Yeah, we've got that problem solved.
Good.
And it's the getting a majority in each house.
Yeah.
It's definitely a tightrope, right? Because the way I view it, it's almost like letting everybody see your playbook. Everybody kind of knows our playbook anyway, but the more choke points that you have within the legislative process, you've got a hearing. Then you get all the opposition coming up, the anti-taxers. Then you've got to go through that committee. Then you go to another committee, all to end up at the same place, which is appropriations, which is the co-chairs, which is the ways and means process and the budget. So and it's not just other cities that are going to come out and say, well, we also have this, we've got these we've got these properties off the rolls. But then you've got colleagues, right, that just want to really throw a wrench in things. A lot of my colleagues just kill stuff. They pride themselves on going in and killing bills. That's what they're hired to do, and that's what they're really good at. So giving them any opportunity in a public forum to do that, I always get a little nervous about that. That being said, I think we can really do the work. And to a few points that we've already made, we are doing the work and we're getting down that road. So I think people understand we have tens of thousands of people that come into our city every day to work. They're working in buildings that are off the rolls. They understand the need that we have here. They understand the service that we provide in coordination with OSP and other public safety and fire folks in and around the building. So I think we've got a good story to tell. We need to keep telling that to all our folks. But at the same time, we've really got to work hard to convince why this fits in the overall picture with Oregon. And to try to do that is a little bit of a tightrope.
So I can understand that obviously a legislator representing Happy Valley is not interested in what our constituents have to say. But what about the governor's recommended budget? Does it make sense to let her know that our constituents feel strongly about that, or does she already know?
She does, and both her ledge director and her, I believe, conversations with you, Mr. Mayor, they want to help. Obviously, after the payroll tax, they still understand the need that exists here, and they understand the partnership because they are here with us day in, day out.
Sure.
The nice thing is that capital district we've talked about has been defined in statute through some gun legislation that happened in 21. So we've got that piece of it done. So we really don't need the statutory side. We'll have to find a way to tie that. That being said, I think there's opportunities there for both, Counselor. So yes, we continue to message with our folks, with our constituents. They are strong advocates for us. And we also go to work with those coaches, the leadership and those ways of meeting co-chairs to get those things done. I think we can strategically do that.
Can you sort of give me an idea what the borders of that district are? I'm just curious. If you said that they was.
Yeah, we-
Maybe on the
We'll
map
follow
right
up
up there.
with that.
Yeah,
Oh,
Okay.
We'll
Would-
follow up with the bill reference, but it is interesting to hear that it's coming out in neighborhoods. where-
Yes.
So that means that it's working, it's starting to come back around, that's a good sign.
yeah, no, I
So
mean,
I'll send it.
Okay, great, thank you.
the city manager shared his revenue talking points with us from one of our meetings, and I'm starting to share that with our neighborhood associations as of yesterday evening to let people know how we got where we are today, why our expenses are outpacing our revenues and so on. So the next thought people naturally have after I tell them we've already started making cuts is like, well, where can we get the state to pitch in? So there's going to be, you know, whether I bring up a capital district or not, more people are gonna bring it up anyway. So I just want to be prepared to speak with one voice with this legislative committee and knowing that all of the existing legislators in Salem are already on board, it's great to know, and I can share that with them. But yeah, there's gonna be continued momentum building behind that, whether I mention out loud or not, so.
Anything else, Justin?
The only other thing would be, you know, looking at our, my colleagues and other interests that we work with, right? So you're gonna see a big document from League of Cities today. We know we've got to work with counties. We know we've got to work with police. We know we got to work with, you know, police chiefs and the fire chiefs and fire in general. So we know we've got to do all that stuff. Those are integral to what we do. When we look at unfunded mandates, when we look at things that put more burden on you guys as decision makers, we want to make sure to utilize interests like League of Cities, like counties, to be able to come in and pass that message off so we can really focus on what we need to get done in terms of appropriations. So those are very good organizations that we work with. And that's the only thing I had left, Mr. Mayor, to mention was that.
Okay.
May I have one question? Thank you. So you mentioned that we're asking a lot, we have a lot of big asks. Do you feel that there is, do you have any recommendations of a priority, a list, or have you already worked with Courtney on this? I know that we've got these lists in front of us. I'm just curious if there's any traction that you've seen that you know that some are more likely to move forward. I'm just more interested.
Yeah, I would say no at this point, and that's why we're here today in front of you guys, and that's why you have your regular legislative committees. That being said, we have had those 30,000 foot discussions, right? About our need. People know the payroll tax didn't fly. People also know what we provide in terms of services that we're not getting paid for. People have a good understanding of that. They also understand as a capital city and, you know, with a lot of property off the rolls, some of the difficulties we do face. So when I've been talking previously, it's 30,000 foot level. You guys are going to set the priorities. That will then be our marching orders, and we'll have that nailed down, Courtney, usually by
As soon as we can.
late October, early November, because then I can really start shopping it when I get these other cracks at legislators when I'm doing this.
And I would just add, I think at this point, the goal would be to have a menu of options.
Yes,
and
exactly.
To have
I was
these
just wondering if
conversations
he
and
had
match priorities.
Something was on the main course.
Yeah.
Not just-
Still-
Anyway.
Until the elections settle out, until we know who's going to actually be there. And then we have our menu, then we know who's going to be there, and then you can start matching those up, like what is palatable and what interests different people. And that's where Justin goes to work.
And thankfully, we're a little more normal than Cat and Mark and Terry. We know who the governor's gonna be. We know how the majorities are in both parties.
I
For the
would
most
also
part.
just suggest that it's become abundantly clear to me as staff, and I think to Justin as an extension of staff working in the building, that capital district or a payment in lieu is the
Biggest
It's
one.
our
the
next
priority.
Yeah.
And then
I
after
agree.
that, we move to the menu. So I just want to be clear that we know, right, what we're trying to deliver.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I'm really trying to move away from payment in lieu as a term.
Yeah.
Just, I want to get taxed. I want to get taxed.
Well, and keeping
Yes.
it grounded in capital makes it Salem and Salem specific.
I like it, no problem.
Easier.
So capital district funding, so we're not trying to use the pilot.
It's the same thing.
I know, but
It is, but.
we're trying to change.
We're really
It's a good way.
I think I love it. Now, I wrote down capital district, so I can update my language. That's important. And yeah, I agree. It's always good to know what these priorities are. I mean, Salem's a small town. Sometimes you run into electeds. And you have, time to get your elevator speech to them and just remind them, hey, you got this, this, and this, and you have time to talk about everything, but. Again, I want to speak with one voice, I want to use the same talking points, and use the same verbiage and all that, so just let me know how it's useful.
Public safety for the capital district.
Public safety for the capital.
It's easy. Okay.
We're ready to move on then to our proposed legislative agenda, Courtney?
Please, thank you.
Thank you.
So we have two kind of priority conversations. My preference would be that we are clear on the city's priorities first. If we have time, we can move to the lead priorities. Just for reference, the city's priorities, as you can hear, are really important and they guide the next couple of visits that Justin has with our delegation. But the league priorities are due end of next week, so we have to put them on the council agenda as a recommended action for the September 23rd meeting. So if we don't have time, that's cool with me. So what you'll see before you is the policy statements. There aren't really any significant changes since what we've been looking at. They are in track changes. We've been talking about these and making refinements. Sorry that my back's to you. Thank you, Councillor Stapleton. So we've been making changes and capturing those in the track changes way. And then Councillor Nishioka, you had a couple of things you wanted to maybe lean into today?
I did not bring with me the email that I sent you, but I know that thank you so very much. These were just simple tracking changes that I was kind of trying to understand. They changed the term buying power versus revenue potential, and this was on.
This is page 3 under diversify and increase transportation funding. And so buying power instead of revenue potential.
Yeah. So, and I was trying to understand why these terms were adjusted and so it was just, and then on the public safety, which is, and you're gonna have to help me, maybe I didn't see the page.
I think it's on page 5 and it actually begins on the bottom of page 4. And what you'll see there is just, I think we updated our public safety language at public safety answering points, which is 911. But I think Councillor Nishioka, what you were noticing is that in the drastic editing that has occurred, 911 has been dropped from the terminology. So
I was just curious again. I'm sorry. My watch is talking to me, or somebody calling us. And I was just trying to understand, again, the term being changed. I think we all know 911 versus the
public safety.
Public safety, yeah, it's just like that. But I was more curious as to the reasonings behind these edits. And this is very simple, but again, I just read through it and those were questions I had. And then adding a funding stream cleanup. This was something that I wanted to talk about in the sense of we need so much funding for helping our streams and waterways getting clean and awesome. So I was just wondering how we might be able to add that maybe in the request of some of the funding grants.
So this would be an add potentially to page 9 where we list out, I would suggest this might be easier done at a state level than a federal level just because of environmental regulations. But the idea that we would add stream cleanup as a potential priority for state funding.
Is that something that the staff has identified as a need?
Well, it's an ongoing always need, but it hasn't yet bubbled up through the staff prioritization conversations because we have a pretty robust stream clean crew that joins us every summer through an internship program and sometimes leads to future employment.
The one area is the Waller Dam on Mill Creek, right off of State Street, and the fish separator that Waller Dam was like 80 years old, and it's just muck and debris.
Yeah, there's a bunch of sediment, I understand that, that's different than stream cleanup though, in my mind,
Yeah,
that's
that's,
like,
it's more managing
that's
the
strange.
dam and how to, so I just know that I've had discussions with constituents and with Robert Chandler in Public Works, and so
Okay.
I just wondered if it was something that could maybe be added, but again, the asks are so many. So those are my questions.
Sounds like maybe more of a grant, that's something we ought to be looking for a grant. for.
And that's what I was
Not
asking.
just looking for it.
Could we put it in grant to a higher level?
Well, the guy who knows is sitting right behind you.
Yeah,
Yes, we know. And when we're constantly, we're looking, excuse me, as you know, and I think Dr. Robert and you know, that's very complex.
that's exactly right. A very complex project. So I was just trying to see if there would be funding available to help the complex project.
Yeah, no, we have that on our priorities for grant funding,
Okay.
but the price tag on it right now is approaching 20 million. So it's gonna be a heavy lift.
And that's why I was
And
thinking
it's one of
about
those projects where it's really not feasible to do it in phases. It has to kind of be a.
Big one.
$20 million for the creek?
Because because we have to replace the fish screening, we have to improve the fish passage, we have to do the dredging.
a new dam design.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sounds like a good grant, application.
So that's all I was requesting,
Okay.
is somewhere, I'm just trying to figure out whether it would be here
Okay.
or somewhere else. I didn't.
Got it.
So I had a different question. Reforming Measure 110 is still on our list of legislative priorities. Are we still interested in that even after passage of 4002?
That was one of my questions.
It's up to you, it hasn't come up to this point, but I think that the things we were after with Measure 110 haven't changed.
What page is that?
That is on page 5, a bullet pointed under public safety, Reforming Measure 110.
Thanks.
And I guessed only that the reason that it hadn't been edited out yet was because we were still interested in expanding detoxification, addiction, substance abuse treatments, and deterring public use. I thought we were still interested in that.
I think we are, but I don't
Yeah.
think calling it reforming measure 110 is the right label anymore.
Yeah, there you go.
Because we're gonna see more stuff, right, Kevin? I mean, it's kind of ongoing.
And we're only at phase one of House Bill 4002.
Right,
So-
so I think we need to keep it.
I agree, but I'm not sure, I think that maybe just
Updating.
updating the title.
So would you want it to just be expanding and expanding additional services and then
Yeah.
keep that list?
Yeah.
Expand resources and services?
Yeah, because all those needs remain. It's just, I just think that there's no longer a big push to reform measure 110 because now it's more like implementation of the reform of measure 110.
I agree.
So,
I saw that too, and I said, wait a minute, that doesn't make sense. We need to change that.
So just to be clear, because the next step, if you approve, is that this would appear on the council agenda as a recommendation from the legislative committee. So what you would like this to now read is continue implementation of Measure 110 reform?
I like
Or just expand services and
Well,
resources?
existing and expanding opportunities is still needed. So how about support existing and expanding opportunities and just delete efforts for maintaining. That way, all you have to do is delete and have to change the rest of the sentence structure. Does that
Maintain
sound good?
existing and expand opportunities for?
Well, the first word in the sentence after it says reforming measure 110 : keep the word support. And then cross out everything until you get to the word existing. Would that make sense?
Monitor might not be bad, because we want to keep an eye on what's going on too, right? So.
All right. I'll
Support
correct
and
something.
monitor, perhaps. Okay,
I just think
yeah.
that makes sense.
Great.
any other comments? So are we good with this document as amended?
Yes.
Great. We're ready, so we'll see this on an upcoming council agenda, Courtney?
Yeah, I'll probably put it all on the same night. If we get through the league, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll try for the 23rd. Do you want to talk about the league priorities?
Yep.
So in the cover note for this packet, I shared both the link for the league priorities summary and my gut check on what might align best with council priorities. And so there, I could find 8, but we are allowed to vote on 5. So we could just focus on the 8 ideas, or if you had been through the lead
Just focus
packet,
on the 8.
okay?
Do you have a printout of those by chance? I'm
The-
sorry, I
the
didn't bring my
8?
laptop today.
I have this one.
Oh, never, if you need it in front of you.
I can share this one, Courtney, if you're gonna read that.
Okay, all right, thank you, Lucy.
Sorry.
Thanks.
Thank you, because I will need to go back and forth. So, shelter and homeless response, I'm gonna tell you what the 8 are and then we can get into detail if you want. So shelter and homeless response, behavioral health enhancements, lodging tax flexibility, marijuana tax, cyber security and privacy, resilient, future-proof broadband infrastructure, 2025 transportation package, and infrastructure funding. So they have 23 priorities that they've identified. They're all really important to cities. We get a chance to weigh in on our top 5. And I'll just share that it has been my experience in this role that Salem's top 5 do not often match the majority of the members' priorities, and that's okay.
Because there are 270 cities in Oregon,
Right.
only 7 or 8 of us are of any size.
Yeah.
So our priorities are often different than the 262 small towns. So,
And to
Which is
Justin's-
broadband is gonna be a big deal for them, for example.
And
Yeah.
just to, I mean, I think that might sound bad, but I just
It's
want to
just
reflect
reality.
that, you know, part of what Justin was articulating earlier is that there's a huge benefit to the city participating with the league.
for sure.
And so weighing in on 5 priorities does help us.
What is their proposal for the marijuana tax? What's that about?
That proposal is,
They want to allow us to have more of an increase. We're right now restricted with how much we receive. Isn't that's the way I understood it.
they want to advocate for legislation that increases revenue from marijuana sales in cities and restore the tax losses related to Measure 110 and increase the cap on local. So you could, so that's their basic platform.
Basically increase the cap on local because marijuana sales are going down, so you're getting less and less.
Yeah. Mhm.
Essentially increasing the city share.
Sure.
Would be the goal.
That's
Well,
what we-
it's really important to find a common ground with interests like the league.
For sure.
That being said, we also like to always have our own voice. I mean, it's kind of nice when all our priorities don't align. So we're the ones messaging what our true needs are, not, you know, other mid-sized cities that are close to us.
Yeah.
Eugene, Hillsborough, Gresham, et cetera, speaking on our behalf. So while we
That's why we
utilize
have
this
these
organization, that's perfect.
Yeah. So in my read of those, my personal 5 would be transportation, infrastructure, marijuana tax, behavioral health, and sheltering.
What is the lodging tax flexibility?
That's similar to the marijuana tax. It's just giving us more flexibility to increase TOD.
Okay,
And what we can spend it on, or just an
And what we
increase?
can, and it changes what we can spend it on. That's what I interpreted from what I read.
The focus is really in the platform, the focus is really on the split 70-30. So giving us more flexibility on the discretionary aspect, yeah.
I definitely agree with shelter and behavioral health, and my hope is that our rural cities would be on board with that because rural mental health is incredibly rare. There's just very few providers and practitioners who are even available to provide that kind of service out in rural Oregon. I'm curious about the marijuana tax as an option for us. Anything we can do to support more revenue for our city, that seems like a great way to do that. And I don't have a strong opinion on the other priorities that Chris identified.
Okay.
So I agree. I think the shelter, behavioral health, I think other cities are not gonna be that excited about lodging tax. You know, I mean, that's gonna be in cities where people are there's more and more visiting. I like, again, the opportunity to see if we can get more revenue from the marijuana tax for as long as we can. Infrastructure and transportation certainly would be high as well.
Okay. Virginia, do you have thoughts?
No, I think you guys have all covered them. I think that there's going to be a lot of overlap with other cities when it comes to our sheltering crisis and mental and behavioral health. I think that has become more apparent how linked those two crises are. And I think that the other counselors are right as well, that we're starting to see that that's an issue statewide, not just in city centers. And of course, transportation, I think we'd be foolish to not be on board with that one, considering what we have coming up, hopefully in this next session. And then I don't have many other thoughts about the marijuana or the lodging tax that would be different from what was already added at the table today.
Thank you.
So it seems like there's consensus building around the top 5 priorities that we might put forward as a recommendation to council. So just to reiterate, that would be the shelter and homeless response, behavioral health enhancements, lodging tax. No, that's
Lodging
where
tax wasn't on there.
sorry, marijuana. It's right next to it. Sorry. Transportation and infrastructure funding.
Yeah.
Okay, great. I'll just put that recommendation together from the legislative committee for the 23rd.
Great.
Thank you for playing the LSC priority game.
Yeah, that was fairly easy.
That was an easy board game today.
I'm not sure on the other 2 items, Courtney, what you're looking for, details, payment and load taxes and airport priorities.
I was hoping that we were going to have more, which we don't have. But we have already talked about those 2 things.
Yeah.
So you understand we're looking at a capital district and public safety for the capital district proposal. And we're looking at ways to attach it to an existing piece of legislation, maybe looking at other opportunities as Justin described. And then on the airport, we've been trying to work with staff to figure, there's a bunch of different funding streams and what's the best move. The 2 things that I feel solid on are $750,000 to complete the airport terminal master plan, and that invites the Oregon Department of Aviation to participate, which could be useful, interesting, good. And it's also a prerequisite before we advance some further terminal construction. And then the second idea is about $600,000 for airport energy resiliency to keep it going if anything bad happens. And that serves a bunch of really advantageous purposes for Salem in that, should there be an emergency, it is used in our emergency planning as a great location for people to gather and get out if they need. And the second reason is, so emergency planning, and then also just if the power went out, we would be stuck. And then it would be able to operate air service. So, and that can advance independent of the terminal master plan. So those are the 2 big ideas. There was a third thing flying about that yeah, sorry about the pun. There was a third idea which would which I have anxiety about adding 3 airport priorities, but the third idea could be to take the federal funds that we have already for the terminal expansion, which would focus on a second gate, adding passenger waiting area and ADA restroom. That idea, we've got bits and pieces of funding coming in for that.
Okay.
And so we might just need a little plus.
A little boost.
Plus, I don't know what the number is. It could be 500, 600,000, 700. I don't know what the number is, but an add to just complete that work and leverage the existing federal funding. The only challenge that I see is it's predicated on that master plan. So that's.
I don't think it's the right time for that additional ask.
That's what we're hashing out.
I feel like we need to focus on the master plan and really maintain laser focus on pilot for the capital district public safety funding and really focus on that. And then that would be a later, maybe a short session or some other, maybe we can hook it into resiliency or something, but I don't want to dilute our high priorities in order to get something that would be nice to have.
I had a question related to that too. I mean, you mentioned Representative Evans and emergency preparedness and so on.
Yeah.
I'm kind of assuming we're already exploring this, but I mean, that airport is a natural hub for staging area and has been historically a staging area for all kinds of emergencies. We've talked about Cascadia, we've talked about staging for wildfire response and so on. To what extent can we see emergency preparedness dollars towards our airport that will also accomplish that goal of helping us respond to things going on in the canyon and what have you? Are we already doing that?
I think generally, yes, but like a pointed specific ask, no. But I think that like in terms of the emergency power and that kind of stuff, to me, that seems like the perfect place for that ask.
Yeah.
And it's almost, we can just attach it to other efforts for resiliency, and I think Rep. Evans is the perfect person to carry that ball.
Excellent. So thank you for the feedback, and I'm sorry that I didn't have what I expected to have today.
Oh, it's fine.
So we have a clear sense of the priorities moving forward, both for the league and for the city. That's the main goal. I'm gonna follow up with an email out to that piece of legislation that identifies the capital district so that you have a sense of the
The
bounds.
space, yeah, I just wanted to know the boundaries, thank you.
And then the last bit, there's a table of grants that is in your packet.
Right, so we have that.
We've
listed.
talked about that probably not for today. There are still several pending. We did hear the second attempt at the Safe Streets for All was a no.
Yeah.
So just so you have that awareness, it's been moved down to not funded, but these exercises are really useful for staff because they give us a clear sense of how to write about the priority, and then we can repurpose it in many different ways. So it's not a
Upper and
total
Lower
loss.
Bennett Dam were not funded.
Right, but that's not showing as, I don't think I moved it to unfunded. Yeah, and there's we actually have a moment with them, the grant making group, to learn about why that didn't go so well. I think that might be actually in a couple of minutes.
Okay, cool. Well, I don't see anything else on our agenda. Is there anything else?
Do you have anything else?
No,
This is
we are adjourned.